Arizona. Good to see you here today, and happy to be here in the office with all of my colleagues. And we're glad that you made it here today. Before we kick things off, I've got a couple of announcements. Next week, Toolbox Tuesday on June 30th, we're going to be doing a session where we're going to give you an overview of the Genie app, and we're going to pull back the curtain and we're going to show you some new stuff in Genie, including new resources that are going to help you to sell POS much, much better. My colleague John Marshall has created some content, including POS playbooks, and we're going to do a POS roundup so we can help you to make the right determination when presenting POS systems to all of your merchants. As always, whenever we do a Toolbox Tuesday, we say to you, this is being recorded and it's going to be live on our YouTube channel within about 24 hours or so. But, I know you. Come here. You're the type of sales agent that likes to use a note taker, don't you? That's okay. If you got an AI note taker, go ahead, get it launched. We don't mind at all. Some people prefer a transcript over a video, and that's totally cool with us. So today we're going to be talking about some pricing methods, and I needed someone that was just, somebody that could speak the language, somebody that could connect with sales agents. I was thinking, gosh, who should I talk to? And then it dawned on me, our own CEO, Justin Volrath, who is going to be leading this discussion today. Justin, where are you, my man?
I am here, Scott. I am here. Thank you very much, buddy. Appreciate the great
Yeah.
introduction as always. Appreciate you. Appreciate everybody for being here. This is definitely a topic that I'm passionate about. I love. And really what we're going to do today is just kind of dive into all these nuances of some of these different pricing methodologies, right? There's obviously we're all familiar with, we've all done it for years. We've been in this industry for years, Interchange Plus. I mean, heck, you can go back to the old, the days of tiered pricing or bill back pricing, stuff like that. All those stuff have been around for years, but surcharging slash cash discount slash dual pricing is relatively new for many people, and I think there's a lot of confusion out there on that. So we thought, let's just kind of get a session together and let's dive into this and let's give some not only help with definitions and understanding of it all, but also what when is it appropriate to use it or when is it allowed to be able to use or some ideas, some tips, some ideas that have worked for some of our really successful agents, things that maybe has worked for people to utilize these programs that maybe you just maybe haven't thought of. So we're going to dive into all that today is really what we're going to do, and just go step by step. So we've got kind of a 10-step approach here that we're going to walk through, and we'll just go one by one and walk through kind of the cadence of this. If at any time during this, guys, you've got questions, thoughts, want to me to dive deeper into something or disagree with me on something, please take yourself mute, hop in, throw it in the chat, whatever. We'll make sure it gets addressed. I want this to be interactive as possible. So let's start with step number one, the early days. So, surcharging, for some of you maybe that have been in the industry, relatively short time, feel like surcharging cash discount has been around forever. It really hasn't. We'll talk about this more in future bullet points there, but you know, surcharging for a long, long time was not allowed at all. The ability to charge fee at the time of a purchase, especially for card present transactions, did not exist. It was completely forbidden by Visa and MasterCard. And many states had specific laws against it as well. And as we go through today, I'm going to talk a lot about Visa in this because it's really important to remember is that while there are some state laws around surcharging, when we talk about surcharging not being allowed or surcharging, making sure you're doing it in a compliant way, it's not because there are laws out there around it. It's because the card brands, Visa, MasterCard, Discover, American Express, have their rules around this. And we're going to talk mostly about Visa and Visa's rules as we go through all this because Visa is the most restrictive, and Visa is the one that goes forward with enforcement policies and creates the rules that most of the other card brands kind of follow along. So as we talk about this, we're going to talk a lot about, you're going to hear a lot of mention about Visa. We'll talk about some of the state-specific rules and laws as well. But Visa, by definitely way head and shoulders above everybody else, is definitely the one who is driving the rules and kind of the methodologies everybody does. So for a long time, surcharging wasn't allowed, cash discounting wasn't a thing. None of this was out there at all. The only way really you could recoup some fees for processing was through bullet point number two, which is convenience fees. And that's the first one we're going to talk about is there are different nuances in all of these, and a lot of times these get thrown into all these same buckets. But convenience fee is actually probably the least used of the methodologies to recoup your processing costs, but it's the one that's been around for a long, long time. So prior to surcharging, prior to all this, convenience fees existed. And convenience fees are, just as the name kind of describes, this is somewhat self-describing, as convenience fees have always been defined as you can charge a fee for accepting a credit card if by using that credit card, it means the merchant is, I'm sorry, the cardholder is able to pay in a way that makes it more convenient than their normal way of paying. So that's kind of a mouthful, but think of it as we were seeing convenience fees for a long, long time are with utility companies, government entities, places where, hey, instead of me sending in a check, me having to write out a check and cut it and send it in, I can instead call over the phone and pay with a credit card. That's the early days of really this fee-based processing is the ability to recoup it on convenience fees. Now, a long time, convenience fees were only allowed by utilities and government entities. That changed as time went on, and convenience fees are allowed for everybody. But again, it can be used in a when you're in a card present environment. That's not more convenient for me to hand you a card than hand you a check. If I'm coming out to your house to do a service call, I'm a plumber, a landscaper, or whatever. It's not more convenient for you to hand me a credit card than a check. So convenience fees are typically used for non-face-to-face transactions where again I'm instead of cutting a check to send in for my taxes or for my utilities, I instead utilize a credit card. Now, the big caveat with convenience fees, and a lot of people are like, well, man, why don't we just use convenience fees? It makes it simple. I can do it on, my website. I can do all these things. The only downside about convenience fees is they have to be a set dollar amount. They cannot be a percentage. So you can't say I'm going to charge 3% of every transaction for my convenience fees. It has to be a set dollar amount. So if you think about it, and you've probably all done this, maybe you've topped off your kids' school lunches, or you paid for tickets for something, or again utilities, or taxes, maybe something like that. Dog registrations, things like that. You'll a lot of times see a set convenience fee on there. That's what that is. It's $5, $2.50, $3. There's a lot of times a very common number. So that's the beginning of where this what we typically refer to as this entire program of fee-based processing, where that's where I could start recouping some of my processing costs. That was the early days of it. That was the first one out there, was convenience fees. Then next up we have 2013 comes along. So we're now past the Durbin Amendment, which the Durbin Amendment is what created the regulated debit costs, the Dodd-Frank bill after the 2008 crash, all the things that happened as part of that. We're now past that, and there's a real focus on how do we help recoup some of these credit card processing costs, right? The Durbin Amendment definitely shined the light on how much money was being made by the banks and how much money was, ways to kind of curtail that. And there was a large class action lawsuit that was going on for many years. It was led by many of your big retailers. At the time, Sears and Walmart were two of the large ones involved in this. And finally, it came down. There was a settlement, and Visa agreed, okay, we will start allowing surcharging under certain rules. Okay. And we'll get into each of those rules as we talk about that. But it wasn't, 2013 was it. So, I was having this conversation with someone the other day, and it came up like, man, you must have just started doing a bunch of surcharging then, right? No, actually not. It went for many years. And even the people that were involved in these class action lawsuits really didn't do much with it. Surcharging was, while definitely allowed, and now became, Visa had rules and structure around it. There were still a lot of people that were concerned, or is America, are the card holders ready to pay these additional fees? Is this just a cost of doing business? We need to accept that. And for many, many years, you really didn't see surcharging or any flavor of surcharging start to take off. But fast forward now to then around 2015, 2016, definitely into 2017, really started seeing it to start to take off. And the rules behind the 2013 surcharging was pretty clear. There needed to be registration. There was they could not be charged on debit cards, which we'll dive into that more here in a second. There you had to register through the processor, who then had to register through the card brands. There had to be signage up. There was a lot of rules behind that. And that was definitely pushing people away from that. So now we step into that 2015, 2016, 2017 area where now the Wild West starts taking off, right? And everybody starts trying to do their different flavor of this. We're going to talk about all those different flavors and why some of them work and some of them don't work, why some are compliant and some are not compliant. But the most compliant way to do it that has changed over the years with different new rules from Visa, modifications of the rules, is compliant surcharging. So in Visa's rules, it's very clear. And again, let me take a step back and talk about, again, I'm going to talk about Visa all the time throughout here because while MasterCard has rules around this, Visa's rules are more restrictive, and MasterCard says that you have to utilize rules that are more restrictive than them. Um, Discover basically says, hey, you can't charge. Discover and American Express both say you can't charge more for our card acceptance than you can other people's. So again, it all kind of points to Visa. So as I'm talking through these rules and these programs, I'm going to be talking from the frame point of Visa because it's what drives the train again. So now we have compliant surcharging. What originally started in 2013 is morphed a little bit to where we are today. But today's compliant surcharging is quite simply that you can recoup a fee a fee at time of card presentment, meaning I walk up, I hand somebody my credit card, I can now recoup a percentage of that transaction. I can that is no larger than either 3% or my cost of accepting credit cards, whichever is lower. Now that's a kind of a nuance that you don't really see enforced too much, nor do most people pay much attention to that. But 3% is the cap on that. It used to be 4%. It was reduced to 3% a few years ago. So you can charge 3% on credit cards only. And that's an important nuance in the compliant surcharging world. And that's where things get kind of, mixed up here and turned around, and we call a lot of these programs the same thing. But true compliant surcharging cannot charge a fee on a debit card, no matter if that debit card is ran as a credit card or ran as a debit card. It has to be only on a true credit card transaction. So if you look at a card and it's got a PIN debit network on it, it's got the Excel network on it, the Star network, the nice Shazam, whatever it might be, that's a debit card. It doesn't matter if you run it as a PIN debit or you run it as a signature debit. The rules are very clear in that debit cards cannot be assessed a fee. Debit cards have to be treated the same as cash transactions. Okay. So how do we do that, right? How does that all work? Is all of this technology now has been created within these devices, within these gateways, within these point of sales to do what's called bin recognition, which is basically you're looking at the technology is looking at the bank, the type of card that's being presented, and in real time saying, "Hey, surcharging can be done on this card, cannot be done on this card." So when you're on a compliant surcharging program, there's nothing really you need to do in terms of you're not training staff or training people on, hey, make sure you don't charge it on this one, make sure you do charge it. The technology is going to do it itself. It's going to recognize the difference of the device of the card. It's going to automatically charge the fee or not charge the fee. Okay. So again, That's allowed. Now, there's a couple, additional nuances around that with surcharging. You should have signage up that notifies the consumer that surcharging exists, whatever the surcharging is going to be. Signage should be up saying, "Hey, we're going to charge you 3%." Needs to be something. When I say signage, it just needs to be something that is notifying the consumer that this exists before they make their purchase, right? So it could be on the menu, it could be on the door when you walk in, it could be hanging by the cash register, or you can have a mixture of all those or more than that. Signage notification needs to be in place, maximum of 3%, and can only be on credit cards, no debit cards, no matter how the debit card is accepted. That's compliant surcharging, and by far and away, compliant surcharging, it's in the word, right? It is compliant. It is the only real true defined methodology that Visa has or any of the other card brands have that says, hey, here's the way you can recoup some of your processing costs through a surcharging program. The rest of them that we're going to talk about here as we go through these, your cash discountings, your dual pricings, any of the other ones, there is no defined methodology within Visa's rules about any of these other programs. Compliant surcharge is the only one. So as you start getting these other ones, now it's, well, does this work? Does this not work? Compliant surcharge is by far and away the most popular. It is the one that is obviously the most compliant, and it's the one that just keeps everything just rocking and rolling, smooth and simple and easy to go. Now, of course, from a salesperson standpoint, we're always trying to maximize our revenue, maximize our profitability. We're not maybe making as much on compliant surcharging as you could on other ones, but you're still talking about a very significant profitability there on surcharging because you're getting 3% on all the credit cards, the debit cards, then priced differently, which we'll talk about here in a second. So that's compliant surcharging. That's the one if you're new to this industry, if you're still learning all these nuances, that's the one that is the safest best, the safest way to go on that regard. So, second up now, we're going to talk about dual pricing. Yeah, John, we're going to talk about that in a second. The old first wave of NCA stuff. Yeah. Um, Dual pricing now is probably our I would say our second most popular, and has become really popular since COVID time, since 2020. So as we kind of worked our way through that, I talked about those early days of the 2015, 2016, 2017 as this all started coming out. There was a lot of different flavors happening. There were a ton of people that were trying different programs, trying their own way at it, waiting for Visa to really kind of create some guidance behind it all. All these different things came of this. Dual pricing was one of those that came from some ingenuity by some large processors, by some of the terminal manufacturers to create a way to where you could recoup this in a different way. So again, we talked about earlier how, okay, I can now walk up and I pay with my credit card and I can say, hey, I'm going to be charging you a fee for more than what is on the shelf because, it says $100 on the shelf for the sweater. I walk and pay with my credit card. Now I'm going to pay $103, right? The That's allowed on the client surcharge, but only on the credit card part. So dual pricing came out as this way to say, hey, what if we created a two different pricing and we could now recoup that fee on everything, not just the credit card. We can take it on the credit card and the debit card by creating a cash price and a payment price and put those both out there, right? And say these are your two choices and it's notified ahead of time. This is where now we start getting into the technology that comes into play here, how this is presented. It's very popular. Dual price is absolutely very popular, and dual price has been around for a long time. Again, it's one of those things that is not defined in Visa's rules, but there's been guidance documents, and dual pricing existed for a long, long time. Think back to, we've all seen gas stations that have, a credit and debit price, or I'm sorry, a credit and cash price. We've seen even back in the day, there used to be differences in hotel rooms that were a difference because of that as well. It's been around for a long, long time, but as we fast forward through the COVID time and everyone kind of came out, there was this desire to say, hey, let's come up with these different ways, let's try this different thing. So dual pricing in and of itself can meet the regulations of Visa. It absolutely can if done correctly. And then there's some nuances, some gray areas where it's, well, am I or am I not, right? So let's talk about that. Number one is that if you have both prices displayed, I have a cash price and I have a credit price, and I have those displayed and they're out there. I'm now notifying the customer ahead of time that there are two separate prices, and they're seeing that as they're going up. They're picking their items off the shelf, and two prices are limited, or two prices are displayed. I'm sorry. Both those prices are displayed. I'm now meeting the rules and the regulations of dual pricing. If it's on my menu, if it's stated up on the wall, I have a cash price and a credit price for every single item listed. Now I am meeting the rules of a dual pricing program. That is stated to me ahead of time. I know what the differences are. I know what the choices are. I know that those differentials exist. Um, so that is a compliant dual pricing program. There are many people that are doing that out there. That's not an uncommon thing. There's actually now even companies that have come out with digital, price tags that can link up with the point of sale and automatically do it and display both of them. There's a lot of technology that's gone behind this. There's dual pricing guns now that like will make the little stickers that come out that you put on the items that have both prices on it to make it easier for you as well. There's a lot of technology that's come out over the last few years around dual pricing. Um, the other way that you can be compliant as well is where if you walk up again prior to presenting your card, prior to you handing them over your credit or debit card, I walk up there, I hand them my pile of clothes, they scan them all, and now I have a display in front of me that says, here's your cash price, here's your credit price. Again, I'm being provided with both prices before I've handed over my method of payment. Those are compliant ways of doing dual pricing because I'm being told ahead of time before I make the decision how to pay. I'm being presented with both options. However, where we kind of fall now into that nuanced zone is, well, what if I've handed them my credit card already, and now it says on a screen, whether it be a pin pad or a bigger screen, or I can't even see that screen, but now there's dual pricing that is being a choice on that machine. It might be on the machine behind the counter that I can't even see, but dual pricing is enabled on there, and it's now charging me my debit card. Even though I presented with the debit card, it's now charging me that fee on a debit card. That's where some of the nuances come into play that become a little harder to defend with Visa, and where Visa looks at it and says, you're not really in that compliant zone because you're not presenting the differences ahead of time. Now, are there a lot of people out there doing that? Absolutely. There's tons of them out there. The fee is not shown on the receipt. That's the other thing with dual pricing that a lot of people like is as opposed to compliant surcharging where the fee is listed on the receipt. Dual pricing, it's not. It's just baked into the price. It's added on because there's a cash price and there's a credit price. And so it's just added into the fee or added into the total cost on the receipt. So a lot of people are using it. A lot of people are having, success with it. There's no issues, no, Visa compliance issues on there. But that's the technical rules, the technical, compliance behind dual pricing is that it needs to be displayed ahead of time so that me as the consumer, I can look, I can make my choice and say, yes, I accept this fee, even though I'm going to be charged it. And I know there's a choice to pay less if I paid with cash, and I'm okay with that. It's displayed ahead of time. I'm giving both options. That's the true, regulation as it exists with Visa. Again, there's a lot of people out there that are doing it the other way. Um, but I would recommend if you're going to do dual pricing, you want to be truly for sure, hey, we're protected here. My merchant's not going to get any trouble is something that is displaying to the merchant ahead of time. I'm sorry, displaying to the cardholder ahead of time their choices, displaying the two prices ahead of time. And you can do that with lots of technology out there. Lots of devices do that. Lots of them have that the ability to display the technology or display the choices, whether it be a point of sale or even your simple some of the smart terminals out there have that displayed as well. So it's out there. It's definitely there in the technology. But if you can have that, it means that there's it means you're meeting the rules to stay compliant within Visa. So the question that got out there, that means tax is added on the dual pricing total, correct? Again, that depends on the technology. There are some choices around that, Justin, around how that's done. That's something that typically, yes, it is added onto it. You're going to add on surcharging on top of that. There are some rules and laws that are trying to go on. I've talked about those in my daily variants a few times. Um, but yes, it is typically the vast majority of the time. There are some technologies out there that try to pull it out, but it's really hard from a technology standpoint because it is the total cost of it, and then the surcharges is added on top of that. All right, so now dual price. So we've got compliance surcharging, we've got dual pricing in there. Now we're going to top into cash discounting. Now this is a bucket, cash discounting in and of itself is a very descriptive pricing methodology. But for many years, we've just called it cash discounting. I've had conversations with many agents, many people out there where they're referring to something as, "Hey, I'm doing cash discounting," and it's really not cash discounting. And that's something we talk about internally a lot is with our team is making sure when somebody says, "Hey, I'm doing cash discounting, I'm doing dual pricing," that we really stop and slow down and make sure that we're defining it, that we're walking through, what that really means. Because cash discounting is the word clear back in 2015, we started calling all this stuff. And it's like, are we really doing cash discounting? Are we not doing cash discounting? So cash discounting in and of itself is a very specific pricing methodology that is different than dual pricing, that is different than compliance surcharging, that is different than hybrid programs we're going to talk about here in a second. So we want to make sure that we're always talking about the right definitions here. So cash discounting is fairly straightforward. And again, all of these, the definitions kind of in the word, kind of in the descriptor, if you really think about it. Cash discounting is simply the prices that are displayed are already inclusive of whatever card processing costs I want to include in my pricing. I am going to if I walk up to the counter and I hand somebody, if it says $100 for the sweater on the shelf, and I walk up and I hand them my credit card, I am never going to pay any more fees, whether it's a debit card or a credit card. I'm never going to pay any additional fees when I walk up and hand it with my credit card. However, if I want to pay with cash, they're now going to give me a discount off of that stated price. That's cash discounting. That is where now, again, stated prices are here. I provide cash, and now I drop down and I have a lower price, whatever that lower price is going to be. There are no rules that state what that lower fee can be. A lot of people assume, oh, I can only do 3% because surcharging is only 3%. But cash discount is a different animal. If you want to, I mean, and you think about it, there's been, people for years, for decades, that have been giving, hey, you want to, your landscape or you want to pay me with cash, I'll give you a 5% discount, 10% discount. That's all legal. That's all allowed. That's something that there is no, rules in Visa about what the percentage can be on the cash discounting. That is completely up to you what you want to do there. But where it falls out of cash discount, I think far too often people refer to it as cash discount and it's not, is if I walk up with a credit card or a debit card and I hand it to you and you charge me any additional fee for that, that's not cash discounting now. It's only if I walk up and I pay with cash, then I'm now going to get a discount off that. So a lot of people, a lot of technology, a lot of processors have really gone to that methodology. And the reason why is because it makes it simple, right? I don't have to go printing new menus. I don't have to make dual pricing a menu board that's changing all the time, and I don't have to do that. Instead, I just say, here's my prices, and you want to pay with cash, I'm going to give you this discount. However, one thing to be, cognizant of as a sales rep is my argument always comes into play is if your goal here is to maximize your revenue on this sale, if you're looking to ensure that, hey, I'm going from a 15 basis point deal to now I'm going to make 100 basis points or more, cash discounting, the merchant can do that on their own, right? There's not necessarily that need to include you as a sales agent. Now, it doesn't mean that you're not able to help administer the program, you're not able to do that, but there's a lot of merchants out there that are doing this on their own that don't, or that are looking at it saying like, I'll just raise my own prices and now I'll just give a cash discounting. I don't need the credit card guy involved in this. That's the one thing that becomes difficult on that side of it, on the cash discounting side. So again, the three main, as we're talking about this again, obviously we all know we have interchange plus pricing and all that out there, but and obviously flat rate price and all that sort of stuff. But the three main things when we're talking about this overarching concept of what we call fee-based processing here at Pay Compass is you have your compliance surcharging, which again, 3% um, cannot be charged on 3% cap, cannot be charged on debit cards. And you have to have the signage in place. Dual pricing gives me both, right? So now I see a display or I see something that tells me ahead of time, this is cash, this is credit, or this is playing with a card, right? So that's what you have. And then cash discounting is, hey, here's the fee, here's the stated price, right? Here's the stated price that I have available. And if I come up and I pay with cash, I now pay a lower price, right? So those are the three big categories here as we talked about this fee-based processing. So a couple quick questions that popped up, and we're gonna hop in here to our hybrid program is um, Shift 4 with SkyTab does 5% cash discount at many bars around me. I've heard that from other people as well. Again, cash discounting has no limit. If you're truly doing a cash discounting program, you can discount for cash all you want. I mean, 5% seems extreme because you're not paying 5% to accept credit cards, or if you are, that's pretty high. But you absolutely can discount it as much as you want to. Again, you could give a 10% discount, you can give a 50% discount if you want to. That's all business owners' decision on how much they want to give. Steve, I get what you're saying about, they're still paying the fees with us, no fees at all. It's just a matter of how the nuanced is they want to do it. I've had this conversation with some large merchants that are like, why would I go up in my cost just to then offset it myself? I'll just keep paying the lower fees with you and offset it myself. So, you have some merchants that want to administer that program themselves, but I would agree the vast majority do not. And I think John is chiming in here, helping you there, Joey. But the the it's all about the technology being used, where you should not be charging a flat fee for a transaction. Convenience fees, I mean, if that flat fee falls within the allowed percentage, that's one thing. Like for example, if I'm charging a dollar on $100 transaction, then okay, that's a 1%, that's okay. But if I'm charging a dollar on a dollar fee on a $5 transaction, now that's no longer within the 3% confines of a surcharging. So when what you see as a flat fee should be a convenience fee and should only be for card not present transactions, right? Again, it's convenience fees are, I'm giving you a more convenient way to pay than our typical payment method. And I always just try to think about, as checks is normally what we think about in that world, but there can be other ways as well. It can be ACH even. That me paying with a credit card makes it easier. So it's going to be card not present transactions, not card present, because you can't argue that it's more convenient to hand over a credit card than a check. That's where the convenience fees don't bake out. So, and Troy, I'll get to that in just a second. Your question as well. That's coming up here shortly. You got ahead of me, but we'll get that. So hybrid programs. What's a hybrid program? This is the one that I think is become very, very popular and has become this really started with a couple of our large agents that were moving away from, hey, I don't want to put my merchants in a pricing program where we have to worry about enforcement or compliance down the road. I really just want to, make sure that we're doing this as easy and as simple as possible and doing it as compliant as possible. So, but how do I make sure I do that in a way that doesn't have me just losing everything on the debit side of it? And so that's really where this hybrid program was born. And there's other people that are doing that, of course. It's become very popular at Pay Compass. But a hybrid program is basically a compliant surcharging program with a flat rate debit pricing in place. And what we typically see is 1%. So, hey, I'm going to charge you, Mr. Merchant, I'm going to charge you 3% over here on the credit side of things, right? I'm going to charge you the 3% for your compliant surcharging. But on the debit side of it, I'm going to charge you a flat 1%. The goal there is obviously to, cover the cost. There might be a little profitability in there. Sometimes there's not. Sometimes it's pretty close to break even. But it's creating that same simplicity in the merchant's mind. Yeah, you're still going to be paying some fees at the end of the month. There's still going to be some processing fees here. You're not going to be able to recoup it all. But if 80% of your volume is running through the credit side of it, we're going to recoup those fees on 80% of your volume, right? It's going to drastically reduce the cost you're paying now. Your card holders are going to be paying those fees. You're just not going to be recouping it on the debit cards, right? That's the hybrid program. That's something if you want to learn more about, obviously, we can have our sales operations team here or your regional sales directors can help out with that as well. But the hybrid programs really become very popular because it's just a quick, simple way to not get into the weeds of like, well, let me do a, interchange plus over here on your debit cards and try to figure that side of it out. Instead, let's just be simple, straightforward. People love the simplicity of the compliance surcharging program to where it's just a flat 3%. Let's do the same thing on the debit side. Let's just do a flat 1%, flat, whatever, 1.25, whatever you want to do. You can do whatever there, because now you're outside of the confines of the surcharger program. But it's become a really, really popular program with our agents. And again, it started with a couple of our larger agents that have made the complete switch over to the compliant surcharging program, but want to have that same benefits and simplicity of the flat rate pricing on the debit side as well. So that's the hybrid program. It's just taking compliance surcharging and adding that flat debit pricing on there. Just makes it simple and easy to do. Okay. So now we're going to dive in a little bit now into some of the gray areas. All right. This is where things get a little gray, and this is where uh, if you're ever around me and I have a bourbon in my hand, I can get on my soapbox about this one for a long time. Is non-card related fees is what I call this. This is the stuff that merchants have charged for decades and continue to charge. That because it's not a fee tied to the credit card processing, takes you outside the world of Visa, right? So let me use some examples. Things like delivery fees, things like service fees. I've seen healthcare mandate fees. I've seen I've seen lots of different fees out there. I've seen technology fees. I've seen lots of things that are being charged, right? They're absolutely 100% waste disposal fee. There you go, Steve. Yeah, you see that oil changes forever have done that as well, right? You've got resort fees when you go to Vegas, things like that, right? The 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 point is that I can, as a business owner, I can charge whatever fee I want to, right? As long as my state laws allow it, and there's only a couple state laws out there that have some rules about some of these fees. But if my state allows it, I can charge a service fee, I can charge a delivery fee, I can charge a technology fee, I can charge all these things. I should display it and make sure that it's known ahead of time. It should be a surprise. But we've all had those times where, the price of the tickets when you go onto Ticketmaster is $100, but after fees, it just costs me $180. Same thing with like rental cars, same things at hotels, things like that. Those additional fees, travel tickets, all those additional fees that get added on, as long as they're stated ahead of time, they're completely legal. As long as they're a legal fee, they're completely legal, and they're now outside the world of Visa, right? They're outside of the card brand rules. And this is where you get in those gray areas that if you have merchants that are doing this, and we have plenty of merchants that are, they just have to make sure that they're doing it in the right way to stay outside of those rules of Visa. So, for example, if I want to charge a service fee, right? I want to charge a technology fee, a waste disposal fee, Justin needs a new car fee, whatever I want to charge, right? I can charge that fee. As long as I stay true to that's what that fee is. The second somebody at my staff or the second I say to somebody, well, really this is just to offset the cost of my credit cards. Oh man, every time you guys pay with credit cards costs me so much, so I had to put another fee in. Now all of a sudden, that became a surcharge, and now I might be non-compliant if I'm doing it the wrong way. So there are ways out there, for example, to do that, and those fees have to be able to be charged across the board on all tender types. So if I say, hey, I'm going to charge a service fee for everything I do, but I only charge it when people hand me a credit card, that just became a non-compliant surcharge now because I'm now charging only on credit cards. But if I charge that 5% service fee and I charge it on everything, card, check, cash, everything, then now that's just a fee I charge to everybody, no matter the tender type, and that's completely allowed. Okay. So those are where people get in trouble is people, implement these programs. The goal is to kind of, hey, I want to sidestep these rules over here. I want to be able to charge a higher fee for these. I want to charge a 5% service fee, a 4% service fee, whatever it may be. That's all fine. There's nothing, the card brands can't tell you what you can and can't do over here. Those are all just as long as it's legal in your state, right? These fees are legal. The where they people I've seen many people get in trouble there is when they tell their staff or they start telling customers, well, this is because of the credit card fees. Because man, we're paying so much in credit card fees, I got to offset it somehow. Now that you stepped back into the world of Visa, and that's where enforcement and fines start happening then. So it's important to do that. Now, one of the, can't there's merchants out there that are doing this again completely allowed, but you just have to make sure that you're doing it the right way. Okay, is having those. You actually you see it on Square. Square is a perfect example of this, where you can charge whatever fee you want. You actually, if you start typing in the name of the fee into the Square system, if it's anything to do with credit card or to recouping anything related to credit card surcharge, it'll actually block you and not allow you to type that in because now you stepped back into that surcharging world. But if you want to call it a service fee, you type that in. Okay, here you go. I'm now charging that 5% fee. You can also separately have a cash discounting, right? So I charge the 5% on all tender types, and then separately I have a different policy that says I'm going to give it a cash discounting over here. There are merchants doing that today. And as long as you're doing it the right way, it can be compliant. It just has to be done the right way, and it has to be done not in a way where it's ever, hey, I'm charging more for accepting credit cards. If you are, now you need to fall into the rules of the compliance surcharging program. So that's where you get into that gray area. You got to be very careful. I know there are people out there that are advocating this, that are doing this, and it absolutely can work. It just has to be done very carefully, and done in a way to where you're not going to start charging people in a way that makes you fall back into the Visa rules. Because if you do, then you need to make sure you're meeting the rules of the surcharging program. Service fee can be a percentage or a fixed fee. That's your decision. As a business owner, you can charge, because again, we're outside the rules. If you're doing things like a service fee or a disposal fee or whatever, you're outside the rules of Visa and MasterCard, and now you can kind of do it however you want to do it. That's just a business decision now. Okay. All right, next up is regulation and enforcement. Let's talk about this real quick. So, there's been through a lot of nuances on this for sure, right? There was for many years it was the Wild West, and this is to kind of talk about what John mentioned earlier is, the early days of the NCA, the non-cash adjustment. I mean, we all did that for a long time because there was literally, really, truly this kind of lack of guidance from Visa on could we do this, could we not do this? There was a lot of arguments about, well, does debit card actually mean only PIN debit because when I run it as a credit card, it now becomes a check card. There's a lot of looking for guidance, and obviously everyone was trying to maximize their revenues, right? Um, but where we sit, and I would say the enforcement from Visa started to really, really peak out a few years ago, and is definitely over the last year started to tail off, but is definitely still there. Let me walk through what that looks like. So Visa does not. I know the person that ran the Visa compliance team for many years is a friend of mine and has explained and chatted with me about all this. They don't have the time or the resources. It's a very small team to go out and looking for people that are not compliant. They're not doing that. What happens is somebody goes on the Visa website and complains. Somebody goes on there and says, "Hey, this merchant is not compliant," right? So what happens is then they then go on to there's a service that they hire that outsources this to what now everyone calls is a secret shopper, is what we've all come to call them. For a long time, I think it still is today. I haven't looked in the last, month or so, but for a long, long time, that was all done through an app called the Presto app. Presto app is simply an app that is for people that want, kind of gig worker thing. Hey, I want to hire somebody to come over and paint my barn today. I need somebody to, drive me to the airport. It's just kind of, I need somebody to design 5 logos for me. It's kind of a gig worker place to just quick little jobs you can accept. So what happens is now, okay, we have reason to believe that this merchant is not compliant. Secret shopper goes in there, buys, takes picture of any signage, buys one item with a debit card, and then comes in and does another trip, whether it's same day or the next day, and buys the exact same item using a debit card and a credit card. I'm sorry, two separate transactions, takes pictures of those receipts, sends it into Visa. Visa's looking at it saying, hey, if the signage is wrong or these are two different prices, um, or I'm sorry, if the prices are being charged on the debit card as well as the credit card, if the fee is being charged, then we have a non-compliant program, right? And that's when then they send out the warnings sometimes, or go straight to first offense fines, right? And first offense fines now go from Visa through the sponsor bank, through the processor, through us, and out to out to the merchant, right? Tip the I'll say typical because the first fines are usually $1,000. That's the first fine almost always. I've seen it in one case that was not through Pay Compass, but explained to me by another gentleman that it went straight to the second level because it was a little egregious. But typically, you're talking about $1,000 for that first fine. And then the processor and the sponsor bank are going to follow up to ensure that, hey, this is not compliant. What are you doing now to make sure it's compliant? Prove to us that it is compliant, right? So that's where it starts first. Many agents out there, many merchants out there I know take the approach of I'm saving $1,000, $1,500, $2,000, or I'm making $1,000, $1,500, $1,500, $2,000 on this account every single month. I'll roll the dice and risk the $1,000 fine. And that's something obviously, people are free to do and people do it all the time. That's obviously a decision many people make. But that's the $1,000. And then second offense, which means another complaint came in about that merchant. They're not doing follow-ups. A second complaint came up, now escalates to $10,000 and then can escalate very quickly and can eventually mean the person can no longer process on the Visa network. We've never seen that happen, and I don't expect that happens very often, but that is the potential if it escalated too far, could absolutely get to. Um, the other part on the regulation side I'll talk about is there are states that have either full on like completely prohibited for surcharging or have certain restrictions. So you got to make sure that in your particular state or the state that you're working in, that that's all there, or that you understand what's all there. Connecticut, Massachusetts, and Maine have strictly for prohibited. You cannot surcharge in those states, no matter what the flavor is. There's about 10 other states that have different rules or some restrictions around it. For example, Colorado has the 2%, that that's maximum can be surcharged. So there's some different rules and laws out there that you want to make sure that you're adhering to in your particular state. There are some new laws that have come out now, like Louisiana has one that goes into effect August 1st, that is just saying, hey, you can't ever charge it on debit cards, right? I mean, if you're doing compliant surcharging, you don't need to worry about that anyways. You're not doing this. There are some, you guys pay attention to this, and I try to keep you guys updated. Our staff try to stay updated on all that. But if you're in a state primarily selling where that's a restriction, or completely prohibited, make sure you're paying attention to that, because now the visa rules don't really matter. Last thing you need is an attorney general, making a case out of one of your merchants for sure. And then last but definitely not least, guys, is kind of crystal ball on this. What do I think we're speeding towards? I don't think we're going to see a lot of changes on this program. I think compliant surcharges is going to stay very strong. Dual price is going to stay very strong. Cash discount is definitely starting to wane on that a little bit as well. The hybrid programs have stayed very strong because the kind of mixing of the two different programs. But I think the one that's really taken off is the non-card related fees. People are realizing, hey, I can do some stuff outside of these Visa confines that are really starting to take off. The other part I'll talk about is like we're going to continue to see more and more regulation around this. States are starting to really dive into this and pay attention to this. You've got to really pay attention to the nuances on what that looks like. You can't assume that just, for example, California has the non-drip pricing rule, and everyone assumed that, well, that means I can't do surcharging. Um, the Attorney General of California specifically says you can do it on surcharging because you're stating it ahead of time. So there's tons of exceptions out there. The industry is fighting against a lot of these unfair ones at all times, like what happened in Illinois and what happened in Colorado. But it's something I'll always pay attention to as well. I think we're going to continue more and more regulation at a state level on this, not at a federal level. Visa's team that did a lot of this enforcement has seen a budget cut and is much smaller. The person that ran that team for 20 plus years has now left and is now working somewhere else doing a completely different job. Um, so there seems to be a reduction in enforcement there. I think just because of staffing or budgetary needs. But that doesn't mean that's going to stop by any means. It's going to continue on. And you obviously want to make sure you're cognizant of that. So if you are doing things outside of compliant surcharging, there are risks, there are potential fines involved, and just make sure that you and your merchants, fully understand that, of course. All right, I've got a couple minutes left. Sorry, guys, I didn't think it was going to go that long, but I got talking and talking. Um, I don't know if I missed anything here. I think John was helping me on that. Um, so Matt, you asked a question, how is hybrid different from credit card surcharge? And all my credit card surcharge accounts are 1.75 on debit or 1.55. So again, hybrid's different because credit cards, you can do a pricing for credit cards and a pricing for debit cards, right? So what you're doing is saying credit cards, I'm going to do it, a flat 3%. And I'm just going to charge that across the board. That's my compliant surcharging, right? And now over here on the debit side, when the card is presented and it routes over here to a debit card, again, whether it's PIN debit or, swiped, dipped, ran through as a check card, the bin recognition is going to push that over onto the debit card side. And instead of doing interchange plus there, you're just doing a flat rate. Now you can do whatever rate you want to. There's no rule around that. Because the merchant at the end of the day is paying it. And that's the big difference here is, when you have to think about that is the merchant is recouping the cost on the credit card side. They're not recouping it on the debit card side. So you want to make sure you're utilizing a fee, obviously, that is competitive and fully disclosed to the merchant because they're going to be paying those fees as well. One last thing I'll mention is somebody just texted this to me as a nice a nice reminder is that remember is that if you're setting up a merchant on cash discounting, or I'm sorry, I just did it myself. You're setting up a merchant on compliant surcharging. There are guides out there, and our team can help you understand the exact pricing that should be in place. Because remember, is the price we charge the merchant and the price the merchant needs to recoup from the customer that gets programmed into the terminal are two different prices because you're now doing the surcharging on a higher price. And what I mean by that is if I'm charging a 3% surcharge, now I go from that $100 to $103. And now if I charge 3% on 103, I'm not getting the whole $3 back, right? So there's a different way to price that to make sure that it comes out and equals out to zero or as close to zero as possible for your merchant. So there's guides out there on Navigo on that, also in Genie, or our sales team can help you with that as well. So I think, okay, so quick questions. Yeah, so if you're doing card present and card not present transactions, yeah, that would be tiered pricing, which is not something that we support at this time. We've made a decision early on not to because that gets really nasty. But yeah, there's not different pricing for that. You could do that though. John just said that. Uh, Through Square, you're doing that, right? That's what you're doing. Square's pricing is already built that way. Square's pricing, if you think about it, is just about how the card is presented, not what the card is. It doesn't matter if it's debit card, credit card, Amex, whatever. It's all about card presentment. So card present versus card not present. So that's the way to achieve it would be on the Square side as well. All right, couple more minutes. If anyone's got any questions they want to chime in on. Scott, you're muted, buddy.
The ironic part, this is where I was saying, hey, everybody, you can come off mute. And of course, I was the one on mute. So there we go.
Yeah. I text here. All right. Well, if we don't have any other questions, I guess I did such an amazing job, Scott. Nobody has any questions. Um, so just a reminder, guys, again, all this is stuff that, your RSDs understand. Our sales operations team understands or can get you the answers on these sort of things to help guide you through this process of understanding, well, what's the difference between hybrid versus compliant surcharging versus dual pricing? You know, compliant surcharging or the hybrid program or combination of those, or, hybrid is combining that is definitely the most compliant, simplest, safest way to do it. But if you're looking to maximize, higher profitability and recouping more of the fees for the merchant, those other ways can be done. Just got to make sure they're done in a right way that doesn't put them in harm's way.
Hey, Justin or Scott, Bo here.
Oh,
So when you're on ISO quote and there's all the options, there is not an option for the surcharging model.
hmm.
And John Stignero and I have worked on one of these together, and we got it pieced together. Is there going to be a surcharging model added into that anytime soon, or?
It's an interesting question. Scott, can you look into that one? That's an interesting one, or maybe you already know. Now he's taking notes on it. So we'll look into that, Bo.
Definitely
I
going
was
to
not
look into
aware.
it.
I'm really surprised by that because as popular as that surcharging is, I'm surprised that would not be built into there. That's strange.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. We'll look into it, Bo. But thank you, man.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. And Dean, to your question, is there a 30-day correction period or is it straight to $1,000? It goes both ways. I've seen it both ways. I've seen it be like, hey, you need to correct this, or go straight to the $1,000. I'll say the vast majority of the time it goes straight to the $1,000. Um, it's no, there's no, do not pass go straight to jail kind of thing. It's that sort of deal. But we've had some minor success in being able to argue back on that if the merchant was actually compliant. But at the end of the day, they're Visa's is the judge, jury, and executioner, so it becomes hard to do that. Um, but it's rare to see the 30-day correction period anymore. It started off that way back in the day, but you rarely see it anymore.
Okay.
John, we'll let you close it out. You got a quick question? You
Close
had
it out,
something?
John.
I wanted to just share. So in the Square world for surcharging, they still oversee approval. So you enter with the cash discounting like a 4% flat rate. You then have it signed to lower it to say 3 for surcharge. But they might come back if this is a caterer that takes Amex, they might be underwater at 3%. So they might actually suggest different pricing while approving a 3% true surcharge. The other problem is once that's approved, you or your merchant needs to go into the fees section and actually enable the surcharging manually. It's not something they can do behind the curtain.
Right.
So it's not automated. So I think that's part of the issue at the moment.
Good point. Good point. And just so you guys know, we're working on that at the highest levels with Square. I think enabling it you'll still have to do because that's a self-service sort of thing, or we're going to be able to do that hopefully for our merchants here in the near future. But as a way to be able to say no approval process needed, just allow it and do it the way we're doing it. Our agents know how to price this the right way and go from there. So that's all hopefully coming soon. We'll find out. Hopefully. Thank you, John, for sharing. Thanks for everyone for being here. I appreciate it. Hopefully it was a worthwhile call, and we'll talk to you all soon. Have a good one.
Thank you, everybody. See you next week. Toolbox Tuesday, June 30th, Genie app, and we're going to do POS Roundup Part 2. Until then, stay heavy metal, rock on, and if you need any help, reach out because we can't help if we don't know where it hurts. Take care, everybody.